Welbeck Street Car Park is one of the most recognized brutalist buildings in the world. Its facade can be found on posters, paintings, covers of books and magazines. Entire photography books have been dedicated to its unique design, and it has inspired art objects, fashion and jewelry. Sadly, this building was demolished, and its iconic facade is lost forever. We believe it should have been preserved. Hence, we have dedicated a short technical course on how this iconic building could have been retrofitted. In this video, we will talk about the story of building demise and introduce 4 preservation strategies. The course itself is purely focused on technical considerations relating to building physics, acoustics, fire safety, access and movement intolerances. The existing building boasted a prefabricated facade composed of diamond-shaped concrete panels. When stacked, the panels were transferring the load to the foundation. Not only the facade supported itself, it also formed a part of the primary framework. Beams extended from the facade to the concrete core created a column-free spaces, an ideal structural arrangement for its use as a multi-story car park. In theory, this should have been provided a lot of flexibility for change of use of the building, as it can accommodate virtually any internal walls layout. There are no columns or shear walls. By adding insulation internally and placing windows in the existing openings, the facade will become weather and airtight and thermally efficient. To deal with thermal bridging, the slabs and columns connected to the facade should also be insulated. However, this presents a challenge with floor-to-ceiling height. Slabs and beams, once insulated, and with internal finishes added, will decrease the floor-to-ceiling height to around 2 meters. Secondly, the structural core of the building, where the ramp is located, cannot be repurposed, rendering the preservation of the entire building structure unfeasible. This method of keeping the structure and the facade is widely adopted, hence we felt it's worth analyzing for educational purposes. Similar strategy was adopted when Centerpoint and Space House were redeveloped. These buildings were built in similar manner, utilizing exposed precast concrete external walls. Retaining the external precast concrete wall and replacing the structure is probably the most appropriate method of facade preservation when the building's use is changed. This method is commonly referred to as facadism. In this instance, a temporary steel structure is erected to provide lateral support for the external wall, while the internal structure is demolished and replaced with new framework. Once the new structure is in place, the existing facade could be tied back to the slabs of the new structure. Similar to previous preservation method, windows are installed within the openings and insulation is added to the back of the concrete panels. However, since the new structure is not continuously attached to the external concrete, there is no requirement to insulate the slabs. This effectively addresses the issue of floor-to-ceiling height in most cases. Retaining existing facade and installing new structural framework was mentioned by the Eric Perry architects in the original planning application in 2017 as part of the design and access statement submitted to Westminster Council. Eric Perry architects appear to have recognized the cultural significance of the facade and indeed have taken active steps to preserve it, despite the fact it was not listed. However, they have concluded that no suitable solution was found due to differing dimensions between the modern hotel requirements and the car park screen design. It was decided that the existing facade cannot be meaningfully reused and meet the aspirations of a 5-star hotel. Eric Perry architects have included a diagram of the section through the building with floor slabs set out at 2.8 meters, with existing facade elements being in the line of sight from 4th to 7th floor. In an attempt to save the facade, architectural studio JAA Architects have developed a design counter-proposal, where the issue was overcome by merging 4th and 5th floors and placing restaurant and other amenities on the resulting taller floor, proving that there was a way to preserve the facade and maintain the clear line of sight. However, the design team involved in the project at the time has already concluded that it's not feasible to retain the existing facade due to costly re-engineering and potential loss of area. Indeed, one of the challenges would be designing the connection between the existing precast, non-orthogonal facade elements and new internal walls. Achieving a robust compartmentation between the rooms could be onerous. Furthermore, the facade geometry severely restricts the internal wall layout options. One strategy to eliminate this issue would be to create a buffer zone in the form of a balcony between the existing precast concrete screen and new external wall. This option provides more freedom to the designers over where the party walls abut the external walls and gives more control over the interface engineering between them. There are still challenges associated with this design option, such as weather tightness of the steel stub connecting the existing concrete screen to the new primary framework, balcony drainage, and risk of flanking sound transmission between the neighboring rooms. We will thoroughly analyze these in relevant parts of the course. As a speculative educational exercise, we opted for mass timber to form the new primary framework of the building, while analyzing this design strategy. We see it as a good opportunity to discuss the fire safety compliance considerations associated with mass timber structures, as well as challenge of timber shrinkage. One of the main challenges of this option would be the need for temporary steel structure, which retains the facade while new primary framework is erected, as well as very expensive foundation works, with the existing foundation under the precast concrete screen being in the way of ground works. This option is onerous, but still possible, and at this point we should ask a question: why the building was not listed? According to Historic England, government heritage body responsible for listing buildings of special architectural or historic interest, while the car park on Welbeck Street stands out nationally as an exemplar of 1960s car parks, it does not meet the very high bar for listing buildings of this date. It does not compare well with the more striking and slightly earlier commercial buildings in the pop art movement from which it derives. The car park is not innovative in terms of its structure and also exhibits flaws in its design. As we mentioned earlier, Centrepoint and Space House were listed by Historic England, and it appears that they were listed because they were built in a similar way, but a couple of years earlier than Welbeck. Despite the flaws in the design, whatever they mean by that, Historic England have managed to preserve this less striking facade in form of the merchandise, which is available for purchase from their website in the Space, Hope and Brutalism section. One can buy a mousepad, greeting card, puzzle, cushion, or a mug with an image of Welbeck Street Car Park facade. We have obviously opted for a mug. Historic England were not the only ones who have recognized the cultural significance of the facade. In response to the planning permission granted by Westminster Council to demolish the building, public has launched the petition addressed to Mayor of London to prevent the razing of the building. However, despite the press coverage and public attention, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, have found no sound reasons for him to intervene in this particular case. In response to the petition signed by more than 3,000 people, photography books and increased amount of art objects and, of course, Historic England merchandise, the project design team have commissioned an independent heritage consultant to produce a report to evaluate the aesthetic and cultural significance of the building. The heritage consultant have concluded that the existing car park building has no particular aesthetic or historic value and detracts from the setting of nearby heritage assets by virtue of its bland and uninspired elevational treatment. And this has paved the way for Westminster Council to grant planning approval for the building demolition. It's worth drawing attention both architects and Historic England mentioned poor treatment of the ground floor, and perhaps the ground floor facade nor the internal structure were worth preserving. What truly garnered admiration from both architects and the public were the diamond-shaped precast concrete panels. Other than heritage specialist consultant, most find them beautiful and worth preserving. From an architectural and facade engineering standpoint, the significance of this facade extends far beyond. Precast concrete facades are common, and the role of precast concrete during the post-war period cannot be overstated. This construction method effectively addressed the housing crisis in both Western and Eastern Europe, enabling us to construct more rapidly and extensively than ever before. However, these buildings lacked visual appeal, as most precast concrete structures were simple rectangular boxes. Achieving an engaging facade with concrete alone is a challenge. Even iconic facades like Centrepoint and Space House consist of vertical and horizontal beams and columns with decorative pattern that do not contribute to the building structure. The diamond precast concrete panels of Welbeck Street Car Park is non-orthogonal. When you stack them, they create elegant and structural ornament. And since it's just one repeating panel type, it is cheap to fabricate. And because these panels are prefabricated, they could be reused. We believe that this facade is unique. There are no facades like it, not anymore. This facade should have been retrofitted not only from heritage preservation perspective. We believe that there was a financial and sustainability opportunity missed. Because of how this facade was originally built, it should be possible to disassemble the prefabricated panels one by one and convert the facade from load-bearing precast wall to non-load-bearing suspended precast concrete facade. This could be achieved by taking the existing panels and pre-installing new windows and brackets off-site in the control environment. The remaining building framework, including the ground floor facade, which no one seemed to care about in the first place, could be demolished. Once the new framework is erected, the prefabricated units could be brought back to site and suspended off the new slabs. The remaining triangular windows between the panels can be installed from the inside of the building without the need for external access. This method of facade construction is very cost-effective and widely adopted. It compares very well to the facade of the new building in terms of cost and thermal efficiency. The new facade is a high-performance unitized curtain wall with rain screen cladding attached to it. This is a high-end, well-engineered and very well-executed facade with a lot of bespoke features. The budget for such high-end unitized facade starts from £1,200 per square meter. Precast concrete facades are usually cheaper. At the time of construction, precast concrete facades were priced at around 800 to 1100 pounds per square meter. Since there was no need to create new panels, this could be a cheaper option. Depending on the design, unitized facades usually achieve a U-value of around 1 watt per square meter Kelvin for vision and opaque area in aggregate. As part of the course, we have analyzed thermal performance of the repurposed precast facade. It easily achieves 0.8 watts per square meter Kelvin area weight and U-value, even with double glazing. And it could be further improved by thickening the insulating layer and the use of triple glazing. This method of construction also deals with the challenges of split-level arrangement of the existing building. The slabs of the existing car park are staggered around the core. This was done to maximize the parking space. The facade follows the slab arrangement. However, once the diamond-shaped units are taken off and existing structure including the ground floor are raised, the panels can be repositioned to suit new unified slabs arrangement. With this method, it would be possible to reuse the panels elsewhere in the project or even on another building. These panels could be reused in the light-well internal facade of the new building, where the structural core of the former car park used to be, turning this utilitarian element to a feature of the building, similar to the 12th century church facade preserved as an art object within the interior of the modern office building on Liddell Street. It made sense to retain this iconic facade not only from heritage preservation perspective. It would be the right thing to do from sustainability point of view. During the last century, humanity has built hundreds of millions of buildings with targeted design life of 60 years. All of them must be either refurbished or redeveloped in some way. Demolishing these buildings as a redevelopment strategy is not an option. The planet simply cannot afford it. Keeping as much concrete structures as possible and improving the thermal efficiency of these buildings is by far the most sustainable strategy. Welbeck Street Car Park demolition could be an indicator that the industry may not be ready to be faced with this challenge. As a response to this, we have developed this course to be available to everyone. The course is free for the holders of the Applied Facade Engineering certificate. There is also a discount to students and members of certain professional associations.